Russia said it intercepted more than 100 Ukrainian drones fired at a dozen of its regions earlier today in an attack that forced all four airports around Moscow to temporarily suspend flights. The assault came 2 days ahead of a unilateral 72-hour ceasefire in the more than 3-year war announced by President Vladimir Putin to coincide with celebrations in Russia's capital, marking Victory Day in the Second World War. The holiday celebrates Moscow's defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945. Our correspondent Adam Zivo joined us from Ukraine for more on the significance of the drone attack and Moscow's planned celebrations for Victory Day.
So Ukraine has been pummeling Russia with drones for the past week, with over 100 drones being sent earlier this week alone. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that Russia is celebrating Victory Day on May 9th. And this day is perhaps the most important political holiday in Russia. It is a propaganda extravaganza through which Putin is able to position his government as being the protector of the Russian people in opposition to the depraved West. Historically, Victory Day has commemorated the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany. And one would imagine that because of this, it was a pretty big deal in the Soviet Union, but that's not actually the case. So Victory Day was actually a pretty moderate affair during Soviet times. For the most part, the event was commemorated with just a few solemn speeches. Nothing really too special. There were a few military parades, but they happened maybe on average once every 10 to 15 years. Not a big deal. But then Putin comes into power and he revives Victory Day as this big event starting in 2005, shortly after Russia was disturbed by these pro-Western revolutions in Ukraine and Kyrgyzstan. And so he organizes at that point, back in 2005, the first full-scale military parade for Victory Day since the Soviet era. However, at that time, in 2005, military hardware was not prominently displayed because Western leaders still considered Russia to be a potential strategic ally. So military hardware was kept in a park about, 8 kilometers west of the downtown center, whereas people like George Bush and Jacques Chirac were in the Red Square. Right. Now, back then, you fast forward to 2008. That's the next time there's a major Victory Day parade. And at this point, this is just before Russia invades Georgia and occupies 20% of Georgian territory. So here we see the emergence of Victory Day as being a full-scale propaganda tool for Putin. So he starts displaying very prominently military hardware, tanks, aircraft, and reasserts Russia as this new resurgent military force. And that concerns some Western powers, but not enough for them to fully boycott the event. Interestingly enough, some Western troops actually marched to the Red Square in the Victory Day parade in 2009. So, starting from 2008, you have these parades every single year, and every year they grow more jingoistic, more patriotic, more aggressive. Um, and they allow Putin to ferment this atmosphere of permanent besiegement, uh, and create this new patriotism, which is the essence of his regime legitimacy. And then when, for example, there were these mass anti-government protests in 2011, these Victory Day parades served as a powerful counterpoint to provide a counter narrative, basically saying we offer you stability and duty in opposition to dissipation and chaos. So after 2014, though, Victory Day fully matures into a propaganda tool. So at this point, Putin invests a whole bunch of money into fabricating this myth that Ukraine is infested with Nazis, which is not true. Anyone who's been in the country can see how ridiculous that is. And so then he revives, of course, this idea that Russia is fighting against the Nazis, fighting against the West, and takes this historical memory of the Great Patriotic War and he uses that to justify aggressive Russian foreign policy in the modern day. Now, ever since that point, Victory Day is like once again even more important than ever. And that's why it matters that the Ukrainians have been able to effectively disrupt it this year. Right. So essentially, Russia is celebrating its 80th anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany. And Putin has said that this is going to be the most tremendous Victory Day parade in history. And Kyiv said, haha, no, that's not going to happen. Uh, So they started launching drones. And Zelensky said that he cannot guarantee the safety of any foreign dignitary who visits Moscow for this parade. And as a result, it seems like he's been able to effectively scare off at least two world leaders. So Serbian President Alexander Vučić has said that he's sick and he might not go. And same with Fico, who is the president of Slovakia. Both are very pro-Russian, but neither of them seem overly committed to being at this parade. And that, of course, is embarrassing for Russia. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping is still committed to attending this event, and it's unlikely that Kyiv will bomb the parade itself if Xi Jinping is there, because let's be honest, if they accidentally kill the leader of China, that's bad news for Ukraine, and that's bad news for the West in general. But it's expected that Ukraine will try to do something in some capacity to disrupt the proceedings. And this is where these large drone strikes come in, right? So they create an atmosphere of unrest. They embarrass Russia because Russia is shown as not being able to control the skies over its capital. And on top of that, when you have your main airports closed, that creates a lot of inconvenience for everyone. Now, Russia has not only shut down its skies, it shut down access to the Red Square for several days now, which of course doesn't reflect well on Putin and his authority. And on top of that, there's rumors that they'll, shut off connections to the internet as well. Uh, so all of this to say, the Ukrainians have been very effective at undermining the propaganda events of the year for Russia using a relatively, limited arsenal of resources. It doesn't cost that much money to send 100 drones off to Moscow.